Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I am here with a friend of mine who I met at a conference, and he was a speaker at a pretty large session. And I am so happy that he agreed to come on this channel. And before I introduce him and get into our topic this month about social isolation and loneliness, I want to introduce myself. My name is Laura Smothers-Chu, and I am the CEO and founder of Befriended Heart, where I help long-distance daughters navigate their parents' dementia. So my guest today is Wesley Cheng, and he is the founder and executive director of TeleVisit in Silicon Valley, California. So if you haven't heard of TeleVisit, it's a nonprofit that helps prevent social isolation and loneliness by providing an online platform to create community among elders who are shut into their houses or aren't able to leave their houses. So I thought that was pretty relevant for what we're going through right now with the coronavirus. And he also created a virtual village for elders, and it's been incredibly successful. So it is like a haven for them when they feel super lonely and socially isolated. So Wesley, welcome to Joy in Dementia. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your expertise in addition to what I mentioned in the intro?
Absolutely, Laura. So I'm a technologist. I've been in technology for over 30 years. And in the last 10 years, I've focused on aging technology. So other than TeleVisit, which you've already mentioned, which is an online platform for creating community using the phone or tablets for homebound seniors, I'm also currently the chief operating officer of a company called Stack Care, which develops a connected care system for monitoring seniors remotely. So that's my background. In addition, my wife and I are also deacons for our senior ministry at church, where we look after probably about 120 seniors. And out of that effort was the virtual village that you mentioned, where right now, in particular for the whole coronavirus situation, we're also helping them to get groceries and look after any specific needs that they might have, in addition to running a whole bunch of virtual group sessions to make sure that they are being engaged and entertained while we're on lockdown.
That is so awesome. And Wesley, if you can just tell everyone what your experience is in technology for aging, that would be super helpful, and how many years you've had and your computer engineering experience as well.
Absolutely. And so I started probably with the aging technology space about 12 years ago. Before that, I worked in large companies like Cisco, Hewlett Packard as a consultant. I also was a founder of a mobile applications company, which I sold. Then after that, I decided I wanted to do something that was meaningful to me. And it turns out it was during the time that my mother was also diagnosed with dementia, and she stayed with us, insisted on staying with us, and we were her caregiver for about 10 years before she passed away. And that gave us the inspiration to start TeleVisit, which we've been doing for 9 years.
Wow. And actually, you just anticipated my two next questions. So it sounds like you do have personal experience with dementia, and knowing very closely with your mom living with you for so long. And I think you've mentioned to me before this interview too, how you were able to try out some of your technology ideas with your mom. And I just think that that's so amazing, because there's a lot of Silicon Valley companies that are coming up now, especially with, they come out with new apps and they don't ever test it with a focus group of people where, they would actually be the ones that are benefiting. So I love that you were able to test those things out with your mom, and I'm sure she enjoyed doing that as well.
Yes, in fact, one of the things we learned from dealing with dementia, and of course, we all know that everyone's symptoms of dementia can be very different, but there are a few things that are quite common. For instance, the lack of the ability to take the initiative. So there are a lot of programs, wonderful programs out there that require either a caregiver or the actual person with dementia to join a program, take the initiative. And even something as simple as calling a phone number and entering like a 5-digit code and a pound sign, that's too difficult for these folks. And we needed to make sure that this was something so simple that it would call them up, and all they need to do is either pick up a phone or they would have to press one button, and that was it. There was only one button they needed to press. So we started developing that solution probably about 6 years ago. When we started 9 years ago, we started just using standard technologies like Skype out there for the phone. And we started using some other video based technologies, but they didn't work well at all. So, as the technologist, I decided that we would have to create our own. So, we did that about 6 years ago.
Yeah, that is so amazing. And I think it's so helpful too. I mean, you work with elders who are shut into their houses, but just the fact that you were able to try that out with your mom who had dementia means that a lot of your ideas and your, televisit, for example, people with dementia could also use that too.
Absolutely. In fact, I have to tell you a quick story here. When I
Sure.
tested it with my mom on the tablet, for instance, we found that she didn't even know how to slide to unlock a tablet. And it seemed like such a basic thing. So essentially, we had to make sure that the app was running all the time, would start on its own in the morning, it would go off on its own. You didn't need to even know how to turn on a on-off switch. You didn't have to worry about the volume button. And the only thing that was appearing on the screen was one button, which says join. So we had to make it that simple.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I'm sure caught on to this too, but just for our viewers, especially when you are wanting your parents to use a new app or something, and the idea of sliding, like there's not really any other behavior in their past that they could relate the sliding to. Whereas if they're
Right.
pushing buttons, if they have ever, used a phone, which all of our parents have, the, old school rotary phones, but, those all require like pushing buttons. So just the fact that the app is always on and, the elders only need to push the button, it just makes sense that they would know how to do that and remember how to do that, because that's relying on their knowledge in the past about using a phone.
That's right. Yes.
So let's get into the recommendations. As I mentioned, you have done a wealth of research on preventing social isolation and loneliness, particularly in elders. And I know that you have the personal experience of your mom with dementia living with you. So I think you'd be the best person to give us these recommendations right now, because I feel like a lot of us, even we're not elderly and we don't have dementia, but we're starting to feel this social isolation and loneliness as well. And so I think that maybe the recommendations you give us, we could apply to our parents and just kind of suggest that to our parents, but it could also be helpful for us. So what would your first recommendation be, Wesley?
Yeah. In fact, probably the one thing we did, which we didn't realize, but looking back, turned out to be really important, was getting out of the house. First of all, getting my mom, so the person with dementia, out of the house was important because people's brains change over time. And again, they don't take the initiative. And so it's important to sort of get out there, get some fresh air, get a change of scene. In a way, I know we've all been taught that, using redirection is one of the key things you do. Changing the scene is a form of redirection, and it's really important to do that. So what we would do is we would just take her out for rides. Sometimes we didn't even go any place. And in particularly during the time of coronavirus right now, and of course, if you're watching this after, it's still totally relevant to just go on a ride. For my mom, going to a grocery store was one of her favorite things. She could spend hours there, and it depends on what your parent wants to do. Go to their favorite place and just let them enjoy going around. Touching things, the tactile, again, not appropriate for now, but typically the tactile part of it is really important in helping them just enjoy those moments. So getting out is really important, and reliving that sort of that freedom is really important. Even today, you can get in the car. You may not be able to go to the park or a store necessarily, but you can get in the car and you can drive and just have that change of scenery. We also found that as caregivers, it was important for us to get out, particularly if you are the one that's living with mom or dad at home, and it can drive you crazy, as I'm sure you can identify. And what we did, my wife and I did, is once my mom was asleep, and she was not a wander risk, so we could do this, is we would dash out and get some coffee. And Starbucks or Pete's basically saved our marriage because it was really difficult. There were some days that were really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I definitely agree with getting outside. I think there's also something evolutionarily beneficial when you go outside and see nature. I'm
Uh,
sure there's been scientific research on this, but
there is a lot of scientific research getting
good.
sunlight, just, looking at nature. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm finding that super helpful for me now with the needing to stay home because of the virus. And I think too, Wesley, you mentioned that it might be a little risky if our forgetful parent was able to go in the grocery store and touch all the things, especially right now. So I think even if your caregiving parent has a backyard or something, that you can always bring them outside and just walk outside and just feel the grass. One thing that I think is really amazing about people with dementia, our forgetful parents is what I call them, that they are really able to be present, so present in the moment, and really, be in touch with their senses much more than we are with our mind going 100 miles an hour. So I think just having them, as you said, Wesley, is like redirecting them in the form of bringing them somewhere else. So even if it's in your backyard, I think that could be beneficial.
I totally agree with you. The backyard, if you have one, is one of the best places because it's safe. You don't have to worry about them wandering off. And as you said, we're thinking a mile a minute about all the things that we have to do and worried about everything. For them, they may not know what's going on the next minute. They probably forgot what happened 5 minutes ago, but they're very present and they can listen to the birds, enjoy the sunshine. They can really enjoy all the little things in the backyard that we fail to observe.
Totally, totally. And so let's say that going outside is not an option. Let's say the caregiving parent, the forgetful parent live in a high rise building and don't really want to risk going down the elevator, or they have a physical disability. What would your second recommendation be, particularly for indoor activities?
Yes, appropriate activities are really important. And I know I've been guilty of this too. We turn on the TV and let our forgetful parent watch it for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And what we found is it's actually quite stressful. Some of the programming on TV, they've been purposely selected, as you can imagine, by the networks to really stimulate. And in fact, it overstimulates because it's just telling you so many things. And we found the ads, because they're only 20 to 30 seconds long, they try and pack so much in the ads. That's also really stressful. So all the flashing images, all
Mhm.
the loud sounds, all the music can be quite stressful. And it can actually harm them. And what we found with my mom is it actually injects false memories into the brain of your forgetful parent, in that what they see, you may think they forget everything, but they actually remember some things. But unfortunately, it's processed in your brain as a reality as opposed to what they saw on TV. And it causes a lot of stress. So basically, to start with, I know it's tempting, but don't put on the electronic babysitter, as we call it, for 12 hours a day.
Yeah, and that goes for movies too. I think it kind of has the
Oh,
same effect.
yes, absolutely. On the other hand, it is good to continue using video content that is available, but it needs to be curated. So
Mm.
you or someone else needs to curate some of that. And then obviously, if you have a tablet, that would be ideal, or a computer that he or she can use, and then curate some of these YouTube videos. It can be music they enjoy, it can be games, but make it something that they enjoy, something they may remember from the past. And it's okay if you use it again and again because they probably forget and they'll enjoy it again and again. My wife is a music therapist, and what we learned is that the memory where music is stored is in one of the most primitive parts of the brain. And so it's one of the things that you forget last. So even if you've forgotten a lot of things, music is one of those things that you still remember, which is why it is so powerful for helping with people with dementia, in helping them with memories, with fond memories, helping them to calm down. And it could even be something like playing an instrument. If they used to play an instrument before, let them play it again. It may not be good, but it's okay. It will help them to really appreciate.
It really can relax them. And whereas news does the opposite. So you mentioned TV, but I think especially now, news is really important to mention because of the coronavirus. And it's also a habit that I think our parents had before our news was so sensationalized. So I really think that that's a great point, Wesley, about curating what your forgetful parent is watching. And I think also the caregiving parent too. We're all kind of sucked into this fear of what if. And I think that watching the news makes it a little worse. So if your parents must watch the news, try to limit it as much as possible so they're still aware of what's going on, but perhaps not in such a stressed way.
Absolutely agree with that, Laura. Yes. And then the second thing would be allowing them to reminisce some of these old memories. One of the things that we found that was very effective is we would take photos and we would put them in an album, basically just put out different albums every day. And we would actually purposely write out the dates and certain events, because she may have forgotten even some of them already. And then let them just relive some of those memories and tell the stories. I know you've probably heard the story 100 times, but it's therapy for them, and it gives meaning to the arc of their lives. So it is important, this whole reminiscing is important to allow them to relive some of those memories.
Absolutely, Wesley. And I know, speaking from personal experience, my dad lost his words early on into his diagnosis. And honestly, I would have given anything to be able to hear a story about his memory again. And so while it was a little bit different that my dad lost his speech early on into his diagnosis of Alzheimer's, I know that that is one of the things that does get lost as the dementia progresses. And so you can think of any other questions or memories that you want to remember once they are not able to speak. You really will be so happy that you took that time to spend with them.
Absolutely.
Wesley, how about if we, as long distance daughters, want to be able to connect to our parents, especially now because it's really difficult since many of our parents are in their own homes and they are recommended not to leave, or our parents are in independent living or assisted living where they're not allowed to leave the building or need express permission, and of course are not accepting any visitors. What way can we as long distance daughters connect with our parents?
Absolutely. There are some wonderful technologies that allow you to do that, but there's nothing like the old fashioned phone. The phone call still is the most effective way. And once again, don't expect mom or dad to call you. They probably forget. And I think it's good to pick up the phone and call them every once in a while and understand what's going on. And the phone calls, I know I've been in this situation. I've talked to many people. I've taught a class called Caring for Elderly Parents in the past. I did it for a few years for the community. And I know that many of us are tempted when we call to be what we call check-in calls. Did you eat yet? Did anyone fall today? How are you feeling? And what we need to do is get a little deeper to do that in terms of the content of what we talk to them about. But let's talk quickly about the technologies beyond what is available on just a regular phone. Many folks have smartphones today. And with the smartphone, if you have an Apple device on both sides, FaceTime is probably the easiest way of basically talking to people, where you can actually see the video and the quality is really good. If you don't, there are options with Android devices. There's something called Google Duo. It's not very well used or well known. You do have to download it. But if you and your forgetful parent have different devices, maybe one has an Android and one has an iPhone or an iPad, Google Duo works on both of those. So it's a wonderful way of doing a FaceTime-like equivalent. And then there's always Skype, which has been used for a long time. Facebook Messenger, many people use Facebook not realizing that there is a video chat option right there in the Messenger. Just click on the little thing that looks like a camera, and there you are connected with that person. So there are a bunch of things like that. One of the other things is what we call a presence device, something that you could just sense that someone is there. The Amazon Echo Show in particular has a feature called a drop-in feature. Some people don't quite like it because essentially you can call mom or dad and drop in on them without them actually giving you express permission. So literally it turns on the camera and it starts looking at the room to find out what's going on. And it's a great little safety device because you can make sure that mom's okay. But what's interesting is that you are almost virtually there. So you can be cooking and cleaning and doing things, and mom can be over there listening to music. And every once in a while, you can chat with each other just like you were in the next room. So it's called a presence. It's like a presence device there. You don't have to specifically make a call and hold on to the phone for 2 hours, for instance. So there's another form of technology that may be useful.
Yeah. And I can definitely speak to the Facebook video chat because I think a lot of us are used to in our careers using Zoom video chat. And I think that is even a little too confusing. And my mom, does not have dementia. She's not a forgetful parent, but their generation is different and they didn't grow up with computers like we did. So I think that Facebook video chat is awesome. And I just talked with her probably last month for the first time. And she was really hesitant at first, and I think just because what they think of as video cameras, it's like this whole to do and this event that you tape, and she felt uncomfortable seeing her face. But when I mentioned that I wanted to show her my new desk setup right behind me, I wanted to show her, have my cat and my dog say hello to her, then she started to see, oh, I definitely do want to see Laura's face and I definitely want to see what's going on with her, especially with the coronavirus. So she was able to get past that fear, which I think was totally reasonable. And then we had a wonderful conversation and we've been talking on video chat once a week since then. And so I really think it's like that initial obstacle and really understanding where your parent is coming from. So definitely Facebook chat, and I'm definitely going to check out Google Duo because I think it's really helpful to have an app that you can video chat with your parents when one person has an Apple phone and one person has a Droid phone, which I think many of us have that situation. And also, I do want to speak to the fact that it may be difficult to have an internet connection with your parents. I know that when my dad was still alive in the memory care place, they had a terrible internet connection and no one could figure out why the connection was terrible. But if that was the case, I wouldn't be able to use an Amazon Echo Show or,
Right.
any of the Facebook chat or things like that. So I think if it comes to that, then maybe doing a phone call, as Wesley mentioned, as the old fashioned, or what my dad loved the most, because as I said, he lost his language skills, is reading a card from me. So I would write a card, like a birthday card or a letter or something like that. And I don't even know if he was able to read the words, but I know that when we visited him in the memory care place, you could see like the cards were all scattered around, and we had pinned them up on the board. So he had unpinned it himself, read the card, left it somewhere. So I just knew that those cards are really significant. So if you can't contact your parents on video chat or, in a phone call, then I think good old fashioned writing them a card just so they know that you're thinking of them is really important too.
Absolutely. The only thank you cards or any cards I get today are from people over 70. And I love them. I treasure them. And there's such an important aspect to the physical nature of something that's written. And you're absolutely right. Even in my mother-in-law, wherever she was in a nursing home or in a senior community, you would pretty much see all the cards and all the pictures of the grandkids plastered all over. It's their way of personalizing and remembering what's important in their lives.
Absolutely. And so, Wesley, I think these are all great recommendations. I think one of the things, especially now with the coronavirus, is that a lot of my long distance daughters who are watching this video just feel like, oh my God, how do I even do one of these things? I'm trying to manage my kids that are looking to me to be entertainment, and I'm homeschooling, and then I'm also trying to manage my job. So what is a good way for them maybe to do these recommendations in an easier way that doesn't take a lot of time?
Yeah, so content and communication are key, particularly this time, but all the time. You hear so many seniors saying, I wish I heard more from my son or daughter or grandchild. And you can think, well, you know what? I call them once a week. That's all the time I have. But for them, waiting once a week is actually a long time. And so what I like to do is kind of talk about the fact that there are actually two kinds of conversations. One is the intentional, where you actually sit down and have an actual, conversation about a topic that is important, and you want to be completely giving your full attention to that. And then there are the casual conversations. And I think that those are the ones that they miss a lot because it's like they want you to be right there with you in the next room. And so one of the things we did is with my wife in particular, because she's the one that actually has to do a lot of the conversations, and particularly with her mother right now, we got her a headset. And what that did is it allowed her to carry on these conversations that were casual while she was doing things for the kids, with the kids, cooking, cleaning, while she was really busy with life, doing all these things. She can be having a casual conversation with her mom, where her mom told stories about what was going on during the day in detail. And it was okay not to listen to every single thing in detail. And that's how you can split the time is know what is intentional, focus completely on that. But a lot of times they just want to know that you're there. That is how they know that you love them still. And it's the amount of time that you spend in the casual conversation, which you have permission to basically go do other things while you're having that conversation with your headset. I think that really helped a lot to create that balance.
I love that. Yeah, I might actually try that too at some point. And so these are, really great recommendations, these three recommendations. What would you say, Wesley, is the most important thing?
Yeah, so I think being connected to a community is important. Just make sure that your forgetful parent and the caregiver, which is probably the other parent who's also under a huge amount of stress, that they are connected to some kind of community. And I know it's really hard at this time with coronavirus, but there are virtual communities out there. You as the adult daughter, you don't have time to figure out how can you play bingo or word games or reminisce? You just don't have time to do all of that. I mean, and even if you tried really hard, you couldn't do it quite as well. And in fact, it's interesting when I read some of the pages, believe it or not, for the government, whether it's a city or a county, this is the exact same recommendation they make: is make sure that they're connected in the community. A lot of times it could be a faith-based organization that they're part of, whether it's a church or a synagogue. It's really important to be connected to the community. Many of those are having, obviously, activities that they can join virtually by Zoom. And I know that not everyone's comfortable with Zoom. So if they're not, many of them also have a phone option. And if they don't have a phone option, there are national services that you can join by the phone. Institute of Aging has a service called the Friendship Line, where you can call in and you can talk to someone for 10 minutes. There is a Senior Center Without Walls. There are actually a whole variety of quote unquote Senior Center Without Walls type virtual programs where you can call in and join an activity. The one that I work with the most is from a group called Covia, and their program is called Well Connected. Find out what's available in your community, get connected. Even in this day of coronavirus, many of them have virtual programs that you can join.
Absolutely. And speaking of communities, I'm not sure how your parents feel about Facebook. I know that this might be a generational thing, but I know my mom, who's a caregiving parent, has found a lot of solace and community in her Facebook friends, even from elementary school and high school and being active there. So I definitely see the benefit of my mom being active in the Facebook communities. And I know too, I have quite a few friends that have private groups too, closed groups on Facebook that are specifically for dementia caregivers. So I think that is also a really great source of community as well.
Yes, Facebook, absolutely. And the actual highest growth rate of people within Facebook are people in their 50s, it turns out. So it could be caregivers for people with dementia. And of course, there are a lot of people in their 70s and 80s who are using it. I know there's some people who are uncomfortable even with Facebook, but you're absolutely right, Laura. There are some major benefits in being part of a community, a virtual community in Facebook. And something you mentioned struck me. Being able to reconnect with many of the friends from your younger days that you lost touch with for a long time, you'd be surprised how reconnecting with them actually helps to rekindle some of those relationships and in a good way. So, if you can help your mom or your dad to reconnect with some of those old friends. They can be, army buddies. They can be people from school or college. You'll be surprised that you can find them on Facebook and get a conversation going. Very powerful. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. And I actually did that for my dad on Facebook that, he couldn't use Facebook anymore, but I connected with his old friends and, asked them to give him a call, a phone call. And I think they really appreciated that. And I know a couple of them did call. So I definitely think that that's a great point, Wesley. And so I think you may have an offer for us.
Yes. So TeleVisit is a nonprofit. So we work with organizations. So the offer really is with organizations that you might know about, whether it's your local community center, your senior center, church, synagogue, temple, or some of these local community, virtual village groups around. If you know of any that might be interested to implement a friendly call program, we are happy to do that. We have volunteers who are willing to do that for free to help those who are homebound and need to have some conversations. That's our offer. If you can help to, get the word out, we'd love to help many of the seniors in your neighborhood be connected by phone or by tablet. And you can find out about us on our website, which is televisit.org. Or you can call us on the phone. And my phone number, which is my personal cell phone, feel free to call me or text me, is 650-291-7556.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wesley. And I am probably going to talk to my pastor of my church about this as well, because honestly, well, especially now with coronavirus, but in general, I think a lot of leadership in faith-based places, whether, as you said, it's a church, a synagogue, or a temple, they're really looking for a way to reach people who are shut in. and not just through deacons, right? But also help these elders connect with other elders, and especially when they're not able to meet in person. So I think it's a really great idea.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Wesley, for taking the time to chat with us. I know that I had this interview scheduled for a few months away, and Wesley was nice enough to speak about it now because it's so relevant with what we're going through right now. Just really appreciate your time, Wesley. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I will put out another video for you next month with a new guest expert. But I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel, and I will put all of the resources we talked about today in the interview in the description below. Thanks again. Bye.